What's up, everybody? We got UFC 326 coming up, and the main event is a certified banger. The BMF title is on the line. Max Holloway looking to defend against Charles Oliveira in the highly anticipated rematch. This has been years in the making. I am fired up for this fight. Two OGs, two legends of the game. These dudes are never in a boring fight, and I think we are in for a fantastic fight. Now, I got to be honest. I feel like this fight might not be close. And what I mean by it might not be close is I feel like there is a massive question mark looming over this fight that I think is going to determine how this thing ultimately goes down. And that question is, just how good is Max Holloway's ground game? How good is his ground game? And it's kind of strange, right? Because Max has been in the game for forever, right? He's grown up in the UFC. He's been around for years. He's one of the greatest featherweights of all time. All that Max has accomplished. And I feel like we still have questions about his ground game. Because it's safe to say that Max has never been in there with someone as good as Charles Oliveira when it comes to the grappling. I know you could say, well, they fought back in 2015 at featherweight. We both know that these guys are way better than when they fought each other the first time. And obviously there was the stoppage. Charles Oliveira got hurt. It counts as a TKO for Holloway. So there's a little bit of an asterisk there. But I feel like there are some things that we can take away from that first meeting. And I would say that Max Holloway is the fighter that has evolved far more than Charles Oliveira. Now, that's not to say that Charles hasn't made many improvements since that fight, but Charles is very much the same fighter. That high guard, aggressive Muay Thai style, looking to push the pace, looking to put you on the back foot and get after you. And Max Holloway has become a lot more elusive, a lot more technical on the feet, a lot more patient. And I feel like that is what makes this fight so interesting is, can Max stop the grappling of Charles Oliveira? And I also think it's interesting because I think that people are underestimating Holloway's ground game, and they're also underestimating Charles Oliveira's striking. Now, wait a minute, Jake, how can you say that we have these questions about Max's ground game, but yet it's being underrated? Because while Max he was submitted by Dustin Poirier way back in the day. That was many moons ago. That was baby Holloway. This is a guy that has really not been in trouble on the ground whatsoever. He's been in there with guys like Frankie Edgar, Brian Ortega. Volkanovski was able to take him down and control him a little bit. We saw Ilia Topuria easily take him down. But we have not seen Max really in any danger in the grappling department whatsoever. But a lot of that is he has not fought grapplers of the caliber of this new and improved, unbelievably dangerous Charles Oliveira. And Charles Oliveira is the most prolific finisher in the history of the sport. And the fascinating thing about Charles, he is a true X-Factor fighter. To where you cannot get clipped, you cannot get buzzed, you cannot get stung by Charles on the feet because his ground game is so elite and so suffocating that if you get stung whatsoever and you're trying to shake off the cobwebs and you have a Charles Oliveira hunting you down, you're getting submitted. That's what we've seen throughout Charles's career. So already in the back of Holloway's mind, he's coming into this fight knowing, I got to keep this thing on the feet. I got to maintain my range. I got to stick and move, and I cannot allow Charles to back me up along the octagon side, and I can sure as hell not get caught by a big shot by Charles, because if I'm rocked, well, then fight's probably over. That's what we've seen when guys fight Charles Oliveira. If he's able to clip you, it just feels like the end is very near. Now, what I find so interesting about this matchup is it's going to come down to the forward pressure and that aggressive style that Charles brings to the table versus the elusive matador role that Max, I think, is going to play in this fight. And if Max has the answers for Charles's ground game, I think that Charles is in a world of trouble in this fight. Because what we've seen from Max, and really this kind of dates back to the Arnold Allen fight where Max was still at featherweight, we really got to see that Max has made some incredible improvements in his game. I feel like Max and his team don't get enough credit for the evolution of Max Holloway over the past several years. The way that he fluently switches stances, the way that he has become a lot more elusive instead of always having to be the guy on the front foot just kind of marching into range, taking a ton of damage. Max can fight very well going forward, and he can fight very well moving backwards. That is incredibly difficult to deal with. And ever since Max has moved up to 155, not only has he carried the speed, but his power has been different than what it was at 145 pounds, which makes sense, right? You add on some extra size, and also Max Holloway has been digging his feet into the canvas, looking to slug massive shots a lot more than what we saw back in the day. So if Charles Oliveira is able to overwhelm Max Holloway, move forward with that aggressive Muay Thai style, and pressure the heck out of Holloway and put him up against the octagon side, is able to get his hands locked, is able to drag Max down to the floor, and Max does not have an answer for that, I think Charles Oliveira is going to run Max Holloway over with the grappling, and I think that he could submit him and get him out of there. But if Max has the answers for that, I believe that Max is going to tune Charles Oliveira up on the feet, and he is just going to stunt on him and dot him up. That's kind of how I see this fight. Now, the reason that I say Charles' striking is being heavily underestimated is because we know that Charles comes out like a bat out of hell, right? He takes the center. He wants to throw the front kicks up the middle, attack your lead leg, which I think is going to be a massive tool that Charles is going to use in this fight, considering that Max just basically eats all the leg kicks, right? We saw Gaethje land how many leg kicks and calf kicks on Holloway, and Holloway's leg was getting bruised up badly, but it didn't really affect him, right? Max just is a very tough dude, and he has no care in the world to address the leg kicks, right? And if it gets so bad, he'll just switch stances, right? But I feel like Charles is going to come out aggressive, looking to attack the lead leg of Holloway, make him a little bit more stationary, slow down that movement, and then we're going to see Charles land the front kicks, look to back Holloway up against the fence to get to his grappling. Now, hey, man, when we talk about BMF fights getting involved in the grappling, it's like we really don't see grappling in the BMF fight. So is Charles going to come into this and say, hey, man, this is a BMF fight. I'm just going to go out there and slug with Max Holloway, and we'll see how it goes. And if he does that, I think he's going to get knocked out pretty early in this fight, because while Max does not have the power and the precision with the boxing like Ilia Topuria and generate that kind of force, Max throws beautiful combinations. He darts in and out of range. He pulls you into shots. He blitzes in, landing nasty combinations. And he is just going to be a step ahead from Charles Oliveira when it comes to the striking, at least when he's moving around at range. But when Charles is able to enter into the pocket, he's able to pressure you and make you feel uncomfortable, we see Charles kind of frame and just subtly slide out of range and land nasty elbows, land nasty right hands, like we saw against Justin Gaethje. We saw him land a very nasty elbow on Ilia Topuria that I feel like not a lot of people talk about. Right? Charles Oliveira is very dangerous. And one of the best ways to get after Holloway is to apply a large amount of pressure on him. And if you go back and watch that Dustin Poirier fight most recently that Holloway had, when Dustin started to find success was when he was pushing Max backwards and was getting overly aggressive. That's actually when Poirier was having the most success. Right now, granted, he was getting caught, and Max Holloway was just a step ahead and was putting the volume out there and it was just too fast for him. But we saw Poirier, he was landing. He was absolutely landing. And while Charles's defense is not particularly great, he just kind of hides behind that high guard and doesn't really move his head. He is still a guy that is very, very hittable. And if he just moseys forward into range and isn't being defensively responsible, Max is going to tag him up, man. He's just going to tag him up. So Max Holloway clearly has the advantage on the feet, but you can never sleep on the striking of Charles Oliveira. He has got some ferocious power, man. Right? Remember the shots that he was landing on Dustin Poirier, the way that he was investing to the body with the knees, the front kicks, just taking the wind out of the sail. Remember the massive right hand that he landed on Justin Gaethje, to where Gaethje was like, hey, man, that's the hardest I've ever been hit. Right? Sent electric bolts through his body, or whatever Gaethje was saying, right? Oliveira hits very hard. And Oliveira, to me, is one of those guys that dang near looks like a welterweight now. He is clearly filled out into the lightweight division. While Max is rather new to this weight class, even though Max always was a big 145er, Charles Oliveira, to me, is going to have a physicality advantage, especially when it gets to the grappling. And what we've seen from Charles over the past several fights, his wrestling has gotten so much better, man. It's gotten so much better. And the way that he just destroyed Mateusz Gamrot was beyond impressive, and I picked Charles to win that fight by submission, and I didn't think he would make it look that easy. He completely punked Gamrot, walked him down on the feet, had no respect for his striking whatsoever, which I mean makes sense because Gamrot's not very dangerous on the feet, but he just marched him down with zero respect, got in his face, was able to out-grapple Gamrot, out-wrestle him, and then eventually was able to find a submission. Right, and that's pretty terrifying because we've seen Mateusz Gamrot in with some of the better grapplers in the weight class, like an Arman Tsarukyan, and have a ton of success with the wrestling. But a lot of that was Arman just basically trying to scramble and have a grappling contest with Gamrot, to where if he was stuffing the takedowns and looking to strike, I feel like Arman, even though I thought Arman still won the fight, I feel like he clearly could have won the fight. So Charles's game plan, again, was very different. So just kind of different ways to look at that fight. But to me, you got people out here also complaining about the BMF title fight. And I'm like, dude, how are you going to complain about this fight? Because one, this is more legit than that UFC 324 interim fight between Gaethje and Pimblett. Max and Charles are both way better than Gaethje and Pimblett. So I don't know why people are complaining about the BMF belt. We all know what it is. It's two absolute legends of the sport, two absolute ballers. They're going to go in there and slug it out. And for me, this just comes down to the fact of how good is Max's ground game. We've seen moments where it looks really good. We've seen his balance look really good. We've seen him defend takedowns against Brian Ortega, against guys like Frankie Edgar. You know, Max pops right back up. Ilya took him down, but there wasn't much time left in the round, and that was the only time we saw Ilya really look to grapple in that fight. So this, to me, is the first time that we are seeing Max go in against a very elite, well-rounded grappler. But Charles isn't just a grappler. His striking is ferocious, his pressure is nasty, and if he could get in the face of Holloway and make him feel uncomfortable, and Max cannot do something to gain the respect of Charles early, it could potentially be a long night for Holloway, given how dangerous Charles Oliveira is. And when you go out there and you ragdoll Michael Chandler around in the rematch, when you go out there and you're having success dominating Mateusz Gamrot in the grappling, and you're putting him in immediate danger every time Gamrot gets a hold of you, like, that is unbelievably impressive. We've seen Charles rock and drop Gaethje and submit him, hurt Dustin Poirier, be able to get to the back and submit him. Charles Oliveira has been able to deal with some of the best strikers in this weight class. And while Holloway's going to decisions with Poirier, he almost went to a decision with Gaethje. If they don't point down and slug it out at the end of the fight, it probably goes to a decision. And I actually picked Holloway to win that fight by knockout. Got kind of lucky, right? It was in the final seconds. But it's just the fact that Holloway's fast, man. He's elusive. He's got that smooth criminal-like footwork. He's out there dancing, plays the matador role very well. His combinations are nasty. Charles's defense is not particularly good when it comes to the boxing. So for me, I have not made an official prediction yet for this fight, but I lean towards Max Holloway because I think that his grappling is underestimated, man. We've seen him defend takedowns well. His balance is really good. And even when he gets taken down, he does a great job of popping right back up to his feet. But having said that, it's very different when you're dealing with Charles Oliveira. He changed the grappling and jiu-jitsu together very, very well. Once he gets his hands locked up against the fence, is able to, drag you down, get to your back, that is when you are in a world of trouble. And when you have to worry so much about the submission threat and the grappling that someone provides, it sometimes can make you a little bit more hesitant on the feet. So while we've seen Poirier and Gaethje and Chandler, basically all these guys hurt Oliveira on the feet, right? Remember how Islam was able to rock and drop Oliveira, follow him to the floor and submit him, right? Oliveira just marched forward and get knocked out by Ilya in the first round, which I predicted because Charles just gets reckless. He gets reckless. His defense lets him down. If he does that in this fight, he's going to get dotted up by Max Holloway. He's got to attack the lead leg, punish the body of Max, push him up against the fence, and I think he needs to grapple in this fight in order to get it done. And if Max is not able to stop the onslaught of Charles Oliveira with that pressure that Charles brings to the table, we've seen guys be able to kind of get after Max with some of the pressure. Look at Ilya Topuria. Max looked great in that fight. He looked fantastic in that fight. I feel like Max doesn't get enough credit for how good he looked in that Ilya fight, man, until he didn't. Until Ilya was able to march him down, was able to land a big shot on him and get him out of there. Max Holloway's slippery. He's elusive. He's very fast. And what we've seen from him at 155, he's got more sting on his shots. He's got more power, but the output has not suffered whatsoever. And in my opinion, Dustin Poirier, even though he retired, he still had a lot of fight left in him, man. And he is a much better boxer than Charles Oliveira. Charles is a very different style, though. He's got the Muay Thai, he's got the knees, he's got the kicks. And we know that he's got power in his hands, and he has a nasty ground game. He's the most prolific finisher in the history of the sport. This is pretty cut and dry to me. If Charles Oliveira cannot get Max Holloway down, he cannot dominate him and control him with the grappling, while I think he's still dangerous on the feet, and if he can pressure Max and get in the phone booth and Max can't get him off of him, Charles can definitely land a shot and hurt him. But I feel like with Max's speed, his elusiveness, his combinations, and his timing, I feel like he is just going to be a step ahead of Max Holloway, Max Holloway is going to be a step ahead of Charles Oliveira on the feet pretty much all night long. I lean Max Holloway, and I feel like we are going to see a stoppage in this fight. I think Max Holloway is going to be able to find a TKO in the mid to later rounds, but like I said, if Max does not have an answer for the ground game of Charles, I think it's very likely that Charles could take the back of Holloway and find a way to submit him, especially since we've seen Max Holloway against Gaethje. He got clipped with a big shot, he got hurt. Got clipped with a big shot against Poirier and got hurt. Right, I feel like while Max is still very durable, right, obviously when you move up to lightweight, these guys are going to be heavier hitters. Ever since getting knocked out by Ilia Topuria, it feels like this has been the most vulnerable that Max has been when it comes to durability in his entire career. Charles is no slouch with the power. He's no slouch with the technique. And I think you got to be very, very careful if you're Max Holloway in these close quarters exchanges with Charles Oliveira, who has no problem getting after you. I expect Charles to take the center right away, try to put Max on his heels. Max is going to have to gain his respect early. Otherwise, Charles is going to pressure the heck out of him, because we saw in the first fight, while people might say, oh, we can't really take anything away from that, it was so long ago, Max had the answers for Charles' ground game. Charles had zero success taking him down. Max was dancing around, being very elusive on the outside, but Charles was kind of getting to him a little bit with that pressure. So to me, it's going to come down to, can Max stop the ground game of Charles Oliveira? And if he can, I think he will light do Bronx up on the feet. But Max has to be very careful in close, because Charles does have nasty power. Even though I think Max has a clear advantage on the feet, Charles is still very dangerous. We've seen him be able to go with some of the best strikers. Even though he usually gets dropped, which it's very possible he gets rocked and dropped early, he bounces back, tends to wake him up a little bit, and then he comes out and tends to get to his game plan, get to your back, and find a way to submit dudes. To me, this is a very, very close fight. It's going to come down to who is able to dictate the pace and able to play their game. I lean towards Max Holloway. Not my official prediction, but I lean towards Max Holloway to get this one done. I think that his speed is going to be on display in this matchup, and I think that his takedown defense will be good enough to deal with the grappling of Charles Oliveira.